So back to what I was saying. Also note that it's super important for the extra subscribers to the Walkline channel. Like, they know the YouTube channel, they have a bunch of crimes being reported to down to specific words, and instead of relaying that to law enforcement, to a news service, you just subscribe to that. And me emphasizing this, and this is going to be on YouTube thing to Gerald, so it gives a very clear notice to how things go. The fact that those things are monetized now would ever be the fact that those things have dates, faces, conclusions, everything very conclusive, very grounded. Very clear notice to what is and what isn't. Or what a reasonable person to say. And I mean, a reasonable person is knowledge, because I can imagine someone from another country that's not expecting such an absurdity like this to be real. But the issue is, if you're someone who is engaging that, that is only within the scene, there's nobody that you see in the videos, leave it at that. And even then, I cannot be categorical enough. None of this is for entertainment. All those things are happening. This is a major deal that I've been providing for nearly 4 years at this point. Which is was supposed to be the publication method. It's just that, it's one of those things. They clearly want this. You notice that the videos haven't views before. Always the more bizarre ones to be suggested. Now, recently, the only one that makes sense, in fact, is Chip. Chip yesterday inside my pants is the only video that I would say was watching Chip for the past decade or more. The only one that would make any sense to be a suggestion. Even then, not for the title. The title seems it's not like a musical title, like a date. I think that I want to explain it. It's more of Chip, which makes sense. That's what I said. The only one that makes sense from the title and the content to be suggested and be something people give likes to and subscribe is that one. Because every other one is bizarre, and the ones that we're seeing having views are the bizarre ones where I don't understand anything, like this all the time, or like things and rubbing and clothing, or this, because again, this is reporting on crimes. It's not designed to be good. It's not designed at all. It's just what I can do to report on the one victim of all. With a hacked phone. You notice you know the purpose of this, right? It's because the crime that they did, that they manufactured, they prepared on the 17th. Probably they started on the 13th and they did this to my hands in the middle of the night. Then they do something on the 16th and 17th, last weekend, since on this one previous. Where they made up believe a bunch of absurd things about how battery was doing. They always could interfere with battery. I mentioned that since before. And this thing that they did to this phone last Friday, notably one day after I had the weird dude saying weird things next to me, which people saying weird things next to me is hardly something that would make me stop what I'm doing, right? But decades, you had someone saying something weird next to me, which after processing, can you listen to a showcase with a screen recording, it costed 5-10 times the space, but I made sure to showcase what I was listening to and how I was talking, and then I was like, was seeing on the YouTube, as I said, the moment I was most distracted, and then what I said, which was, this might be important. Then I showed the criminal to you, and I even explained to why I thought that it was not enough to record it, until it clicked in my mind that it was lurking around me, which could clearly be seen as an intimidation practice, and the fact that I didn't show it technically, could be seen as me even being afraid or something like that, which was not intentional. Fortunately, on the same day, I emphasized that they were throwing so many drugs that caused me to be compliant and steal throughout this entire crime. The steady concept of what's the name? Only that? No, not just drugs there. Drugs here as well. So that was a very clever choice not to enter the street. I can testify that there are far more drugs being thrown in the street right now than there were there in front. think I'm pretty sure why. Issue is, as I said, I was not parked there to talk. I didn't decide, okay, I'm going to stop there talking. I got inspired by what Chip did and losing the buzz and the potential for the criminal buzz was the previous one. Although I didn't mention that because technically it didn't consummate it. I didn't went there and he refused to let me in. I had assumptions to do that because at the same time as the previous one, but that didn't get to be the case, which is I'm not mentioning, even though it's very confident it would, it already had an impact. So there's more of a aftermath impact, a trauma from last time and shield damages for last time rather than something up to date. As for this fraud thing I mentioned before that I was feeling small and compliant, and fraud is crime that they prey in the moments when they think I'm weakest. That's why they prey so much when I'm playing video games or watching YouTube, which was the case, especially watching YouTube in a video I was actually interested on. I don't know which thing it was, but I didn't comment on that in the video. That's why I use screen recorder, which uses very much space. And you can listen to its voice, and what it said to me, and the time it stayed there. All of that is already on YouTube as of now. So it showed something on the phone. Even if I was completely lying to you, and you didn't have confusion, you have to be a lie, you have to expect me to be able to read something flipped up on the phone by the time the phone was lit. And you can clearly see that reflection as now, but even that the guy picking up the noises, he stayed there for 3 seconds. So at best you have a sentence. Even I cannot see very well, it will have to be a relatively short sentence. And you can still listen to its voice, which means that everything will have to be contained on the phone alone if it was that meant to be the case. By the way, this is all the gaslighting that comes with all these crimes. And honestly, it's just very tight. Okay? Well, I can testify to this in normal circumstances. I have no clue what that was supposed to be. I have no doubt that there was going to be mentioned as something related to what they did to this phone because it happened one day before. At the time when I noticed, when the time it clicked to me that this would be something important to be reported, I reported to you. By then, I was being flooded with narcotics that caused me to feel compliant and not particularly react to much things, which I imagine more in the opioid area that caused this type of, behaved personality. Okay. Don't know if that never in my life used any drugs. Sure, need to want to finish talking about what happened in Argentina. I already forgot partially what I was talking before this. I hate YouTube, I think, in general. So, as I said, they did this, right? So by now to use this, it has to kind of function in a very weird way, and this is doubtlessly part of the crime itself. This was not intended, by the way. Proof of that is the fact that we tried that normally, that didn't work on the normal connection, which I'm quite sure was expected. So perhaps this was not designed to be the case, or it was designed to be the case, or whatever else. As I'm telling you, throughout this, by the way, this is the phone, is the same thing as I mentioned before when it happened. That happened in shit country, and also happened back home in shit country when I was purchasing a new battery. I put in a new battery, it worked. Simple as that. And then at some point they damaged the new battery, and I think that they didn't realize that I still had the other one. I think that the second battery was either damaged from the get-go or actually was damaged for real. Because that one actually always presented some issues. But then I put the original one back on, and Bobby's your uncle. So it's like, what? And that was the impression I had, like, what? Then I remember back home, not damn. By then, I remember those things back home when I actually first replaced it. That's why I didn't thought it was battery. I kept saying that to everybody. I don't think it's battery. And then I replaced the battery, and all of a sudden it worked. So I was like, doesn't make sense. So in this case, also that is not battery. And so when I saw that the previous defect of battery came back working. In this case, you see something similar in absurdity, which is that first off this phone, and now this one. No, not this. The battery technically is shoot here. But in the days after, you also see it taking like 4 times after it dies of battery, shuts down because of low battery. You can turn it on and it boots up the entire process. And then when it presumably finally connects to something, the battery flips to 0. You can see the symbol 0 in screen, and then it shuts down. Or in this purpose, presumed because of the system. I imagine most of those phones have a system where if the system leads to the battery to 0, it shuts down the phone to prevent the phone from crashing, essentially. It's low battery. Same reason you shut down your computer instead of just putting in the plug. But my issue is, that's not how it's supposed to happen. I mean, I don't know if I simply don't pay attention to it, but to say, if that was close to zero battery, it will not turn on. It will not turn on 3 times for sure, which means that whatever is there, it was enough for the phone to turn the phone on 3 separate times after dying of battery. Some of which going all the way to the point and starting the camera and start recording. So it's not like as soon as it turns on it crashes down again. It stays on for a little while. The issue is that this wasn't a thing on the other phone. Although you're right, it would crash or battery, so perhaps it could have been, as you noticed. But even if it is, the same fact that happened on this phone. You can see, I think it was the technician mentioned the fact that the phone is open. It could, well, yeah, indeed, this thing battery started because the phone stayed on the ground. No, it didn't. But on a Friday, after all the crimes you saw, after all the incidents you saw to that point, in the middle of a video when they're describing events that happened in Argentina, it's kind of this one is important, and they will have proof of that, and I should have proof of that in Southern Soil, and some of it with me as well. While mentioning events when they threw Pass and Share, her to prove, and for me to desperately have to go pee in the bathroom, midway through it, in an instant, and I can guarantee to you that the battery was not disconnected and nothing else was done. And he said yesterday, the same technician, or 2 days ago, whatever it was, that the battery is fine. Because my genuine concern, the only possibility of this being hardware, in my opinion, was that I put this little piece of wood to pressure the contactor into place, right? Except everything's very loose because the plastic on top of that is loose enough. I just slide it in. It's not tight. Everything was fine, right? So my assumption was that when it fell in the ground, he punctured the flex of the battery. But if he had punctured the flex, he would never say the battery is good because it means there's no battery going in and out of the battery. There's no energy in and out of the battery, right? The whole point was that he connected the flex, the access point to the battery, and there was no power. So my assumption was, even if it boiled down to that the only possibility of this being hard, even though that I was confident that it wasn't, because as I said, it's not the first time I experienced it, including the issue of connecting again, to have the thing starting halfway through and then stopping, then starting, then stopping, then starting, then stopping, as it's starting the system. It was common before, okay? And the thing when the guy said that, he was charging the phone, the first thing he said, I remember now, when I put it in, was the battery had no power at all. It was discharged early in the first place. And so I was going to leave it some charge. And now it's like, okay, so the battery just discharged. Funny enough, that, apart from what I mentioned, which is not even like a hardware issue, it's mostly just like a thing, that would have made some sense. If the battery is completely discharged, then we just charge. We wouldn't have, I suppose you could have died there. It was not too much battery at that point. But then, and it said, we're going to leave the other day to charge a bit more, several other hours. But then when you come back the other day, which was the next day, sorry, I explained that one already. So continuing now with something else. The Argentinian thing. No, this is the thing. What's the other thing that I was saying? Yeah, we're not going all the way there. Because over there we're on top of a house and there's not saying in front of this here either. Because I don't know what the fuck this is. But it's certainly going to be used to say it's something to do with me. So I'm not saying that either. So we're moving forward. My assumption, let's cut in the crack. On this one. Not cut on the crack, let's cut on this technique. Turn right into that. I explained everything else. There's tons of factors. There's tons of coincidences. There's tons of things that are building up on that day. I enumerated most of them. You already on YouTube. Everything's saved. Everything is documented. Expect everything. The guy's up with this here. So many things that I have to play. I have to play from this phone, the audio. I have to play. This is the point. Everything is listened to. It's a huge burden on me. Okay? Everything has to be copied everywhere. To guarantee that they cannot delete that or tamper with it. Everything has to, apart from being copied everywhere, has to be uploaded. These days I cannot even upload properly to the Google Drive account because again I chose the AI option and now I cannot not choose AI option. Before I had the normal Google Drive without AI. And then I thought they're offering the upgrade for the same price. It's foolish enough, same price for a couple months, excuse me. And I was foolish enough to take it. So, because I thought, okay, then I can just roll back, right? But then the original one doesn't exist anymore. Now the only one with 2 terabytes, yes. When I say you have terabytes of data, because I literally mean there's terabytes of data. Now, not yet on that file, on that Google Drive account, but you sure as hell have that overhaul in the files. Even if you don't count the ones in self-installed, but you might get that. I just had, you see them bragging and gloating, doing all sorts of things about all sorts of crimes. If they were able to destroy evidence that was, well, I almost said a couple times, not almost on one of them, but other times, they would have done so. They would have bragged about it, they would have floated, they would have tried to show that to me. I just see them do for other things. So, this is it. Talking about that, now that I mentioned this time, it's going to store a phone for me in shit country, which by the way, they'll be known to everything. So is how known to police. So if they say that they don't, but I guarantee why, because they said it's guaranteed to be known by law enforcement. Plain and simple, no ifs, no buts. There's a lot of drugs coming from there. That's the difference. So if I know the difference, over there by the wall, most of the wind is sideways. Over here, most of the breeze comes from the back. That's why. So, that's why. No, but you can see the physical difference in me. And that's another thing. So, I was talking in the previous one about the effect it has on me. You can notice the minor details of. That's one right here. Confusion. You see how coherent I was being out there? I walked 50 meters? Less than that? Oh, less than 50 meters. And you see the impact it has on me. No sun, no other things. Just the air that I breathe. Listen to that and listen to the things that I say and start to make it make sense, right? As I was saying though, back to the so I'm just showing some context for their crimes as they do them. And keep in mind, 17th the battery, then the 20th this. On the 13th they're assaulting with a knife, presumably to check the evidence, potentially try to tamper with something. I really know where I saw the cards or the things like this, presumably. At least the ones that are still with me, because the other ones are clearly already deployed in places, because again, the assumption that they would assault me, even though that they've been doing in shit country for this entire day. That is, something like several some municipal guard vehicle passing by, as I said, I didn't want to flip on him because then I'll be the one starting the interaction. But I can just point to you and you can just casually mention that it happened, and you know it happened. That's the thing, nothing happened. It's just police vehicle doing what it's supposed to be doing. So my point, it's not an accusation, it's not a complaint, it's just mentioned in case in the future that becomes important. As I said, when I said to you that you have those things, the best environment together. this as well. This is a pedestrian path. It's not so important for one dude, but apparently important now that I've seen that. So another very logical thing that I just did is actually even more logical if you see what I didn't. So here's the deal. Apart from that, as I was saying, so it's just one. As I said before, so there's no complaints, it's just in case that becomes something. The reason I say to you terabytes of things and I reference so many things and I say they're in the file is because they are there in the first place, right? Or despite criminal past attempts, which is a very why it's such an obvious thing that assaulting me would be the go-to action. Which is why we keep separate copies everywhere. Even that there is really no safe place, even if they were invading our hotel rooms. Yeah, it's not a joke. And other things, in the country and even here in this country, so I'm quite confident. Not quite confident, know for sure that some of them, don't know if all the hotels, but some of them for sure. And I think all the hotels. Gotham South Hotel Lira, the pousada downtown, involved at least one, at least more than one. And also there's some drugs inside of the rooms, so we would feel weird at times. I tried to seal the doors. Notice how they never reacted to me sealing the doors. Later realized the assumption was real victim crimes, so they could say that they were hearing things coming from the room. It sounded like rapping as I leave a bunch of boxes that clearly rapped. Later on, I imagine they trying to create a problem with that because of it. It provides a perfectly good explanation. So imagine they saying that, oh no, you're smoking, doing something in the room, which I imagine that's something they would do. And then it comes out with me with a bunch of boxes, so you think, in between, the guy came out of a bunch of boxes that clearly had to be closed. Closing the boxes or smoking something in the room with no smell or anything whatsoever, right? That's me. So when I say in the room and I mention a terabyte of data, yeah. So now imagine how much evidence they imagine to have been able to destroy by that time for that, even that lie to be brought up. What I'm saying is that that's a clear lie. Another example is Hotel Manacá downtown, which is straight up accused Tanya to smoke. And this is a major deal because I wouldn't let her smoke. I hate smoke smell. And I wouldn't have her smoke in the room. As a matter of fact, that's the reason why you see many criminals trying to do that close to me and why they are often filmed. That is an assault. I think by crime, that is an assault. You are trying to cause harm to someone else through your actions deliberately. So even like a negligent thing is doing for these criminals based on evidence of the fact you can clearly establish a mens rea and mens juris. I need to actually remember that. I always forget. I always keep saying that I forget. I don't actually know. I heard a couple of judges mentioning it, but I don't remember the other one. So it's not going to be difficult based on precedent, MO, which is why again MO is important, and the rest to establish the action. This is just a pattern behavior for those criminals, and it's done deliberately. So she could have been there loose the entire time instead of locked up in a cage. Anyway, so she didn't smoke in the room. There was no smell in the room. There was a lot of weird smells in the room. There's certainly drugs in the room, but nothing that she would have done. And I want to know even the assumption is, as I said, it's just a real victim. You know, the millions of just good law, but the words cannot come out. Good citizens and being abused by the one guy. Neat. As I said, for whatever floats the boat, and many of those assumptions are so bizarre. So I'll continue with the things as of that. So we're saying that there are many things that happen here, and then the assumption comes that, well, clearly it's not that there is no such thing as a safe place, but there is safety. safety is not that much of an safety is an abstract concept. It's not as attainable as you think, right? So basically, I'm obviously not gonna shoot down here. So need for that one, the shoot down to be only means that we can link a trace back to the criminals. But there are modern ways for you to see what actually happened in other places, and I don't make accusations that I cannot back up. Plain and simple. Besides, if you want to see actual evidence of those, just try that. You just need to find the criminal, and the evidence is right there. Now, cracking inside the open is not gonna get it to come out any more than potentially just asking and hoping he's gonna cooperate with you. But if I can outsmart them, again, as I said in the previous one, they're assumptions, right? Well, I imagine me dealing with smart people, they'll be able to think things that I cannot. They think they're going to fool everybody else because they're smarter than everybody else. So, if I can outsmart them or be in trouble, sleep deprived, abused every day, and desocialized without having a single person to talk to in over years, talk to genuinely. Because as you see a lot of criminals who are best people talking to me professionally, quote unquote, like, good morning, ID in the receipt. Yes, I typed the ID, and okay, good day, goodbye. That's not really interaction. It's honest, for its worth. It's doing its job, that's what it's saying, but it's not interaction. You see the fake with the other ones, though, which are more interactions, but those will be honest. It's like when Joe from Romania driver starts to talk to me and on details. You notice how it got pretty bizarre, not from them, but from random individuals. Like, I get down from the bus, and you have this random janitor who never once said good morning to me. And he says, like, hey, where do you live? It's like, where does your family live? Is like good morning right now? Hey, where does your family live? And it's like, what is the assumption, right? You have to be so sure that someone is guaranteed to destroy the evidence about that you intend to just generate upon yourself. That dude is just staring at me as walking, and I'm not comfortable with that. So be advised, this might be the beginning. Right? Follow the advice, I follow the police with some mouth shut to get to listen from the beginning. Because he kept turning his neck a bit too much, and criminals like to do that because of their masturbating crimes. Again, I don't know if I explain why. Masturbating crimes is all the criminals know what's happening, they know each other, and they know that they are not each other person. I'm saying that they know that they are doing that to me, right? So when you have a guy saying that, something is smell, the dehumanization smell one is one of the most common. So back in the day, this in Argentina, they will throw that mustache on the best place for them to throw that. They throw that in McDonald's as well, and later in Burger King. Burger King is better, for instance, on the food as well in Argentina. Probably super company. But McDonald's is one of the best. They threw laxative in my orange juice in airport stays where I used to sleep. Later, it happened on the same day because always, right? So for some miracle, I managed to get to the bathroom because again, the Lord, the one that is always there, right? I managed to get to the bathroom without causing that. Now again, you need to stress enough, even at face value, in a McDonald's, which is an American brand that cares about its image. So I'm quite confident that they wouldn't be thrilled to know that a manager, and he was a manager because of the uniform, it was a different uniform as the Canadian McDonald's, gave a homeless person with very few belongings a laxative in the juice that they paid for in full with receipt. Because it's funny to get it to have an accident. So by itself, that is already a fired person, and they'll be potentially reporting to the police on account of a bunch of things because the company wanted nothing to do with that in any real place, right? So just by itself, at face value, even without being a part of this war crime, just information in self-contained. And when I said there's something dark inside the juice, its response was, and this is a direct quote, yeah, it's very concentrated, followed by giggles, which taking this crime for a while, as I said, been filming that in video, although the evidence isn't solvent soil yet, unless they think I put them the same night, and I think that they try to, with the help from airport police, which is separate in Argentina. They have their own police just for the airport. Although we say we'll have airport security, yeah, TCA, TSA, right? But it's separate than, they're not actual police officers, are they? I thought that they are like separate, they cannot just, that they don't, being a police officer is its own thing, you have a series of obligations and rights, you have a lot of rights, that's why, again, dive another thing, I was going to the last thing about the subject, in the country, they are the jurisdiction is inside the police station. It's like, police officers can go to another state, we have the executive jurisdiction in the United States, or, certain, or enter a federal building and jurisdiction changes, but at the end of the day, they're still police officers, right? And that's a major thing. Being a police officer, regardless of agency, is different than just being security. The whole thing carrying a badge thing. Anyone with knowledge on that knows what I'm talking about, so I'm going to waste time on this. In Argentina they are, I don't know if in the US they are, never been there. In this country, I don't think that the security in the airport is. I know it is federal police, basically just the country's federal police, just doing that would be equivalent to the FBI. To just the stays there, they have a post. But most of the private is done privately, the security is done privately, I think. For some reason in your country, the security is done by law enforcement, while you have the other thing. Is there stress enough that they use drugs on me every day? Do I need to stress out the point to have done by law enforcement inside an airport? Just an international airport. They have flights everywhere around the world. Like, should I say, 3 Europe, sure everywhere. Again, you make the security implications in there too. Keep it in mind. They give an instance of the news trying to look Philippines. Like, this is where I literally witnessed, right after they removed the battery, I have so many stories. They removed the battery from one of my earpods, so the battery keeps draining. And then he closes that on top of a lighter. And arguing with something inside. He picks up not on mine. Mine is in my bag. I was in a restaurant eating something. It's a bakery. I was eating toast. Because they're going to put a port there, because an airport's expensive in general. And McDonald's is putting things in my food, which is going to be a huge deal later. Because again, McDonald's was not putting things in my food. Arcos Dorados in Argentina was putting things in my food. They're not the same companies, but as I know, it's not even the same McDonald's model to have. Like they have themselves. So again, the major deal is, and as I said, it's a type of thing that makes you sick. First off, no one is going to have a beginning. Because imagine what's very funny. Let's follow the line of thought for 2 seconds to imagine that they ever thought this through, right? Let's say that they decide that there's a major sanctions from the main branches, right? Because, the people from other countries looking at this being horrified, and perhaps they're not going to want to support a company that thinks it's funny to, even at face value, abuse the homeless one, right? And at the end of the day, they break contracts because clearly there's some contractual clause you're not allowed to distribute the band, or else, it's a very safe assumption. And then they essentially sue them, and it's a big deal. At the end of the day, it's going to go down to why wouldn't they actually do it, right? Because again, we're talking about difference in economy. There are big differences between people who have seen this as an outrage. And this is just one example. There's so much worse things to happen. There's drugs, the other thing. And the differences, because people are going to be outraged for that. And I can imagine a lot of people in the United States and Europe just going to, next door Wendy's or instead of McDonald's because of that. Because we have options, right? And that's a very common thing as well, because it's a reaction in countries that tend to be careful morals on things, right? McDonald's is clearly aware of that, and make sure that they do that. And I don't have any doubt that McDonald's as a brand haven't done that. They're not involved in this. They don't even know probably what mildly what's happening. And that's what I went on my way now to say, that it wasn't McDonald's, this was Arcos Dourados, it was the sausage area, it's the best. It's more than just one guy. It's more than just employees. Because in Chicago, not so much here. Here's a bit more complicated. I don't have that much experience. But right now it's not happening in the very least. Which the one that I go to, McDonald's is used to something McDonald's here in this country as well. When you saw earlier that everything that I would end up buying would have some issue from not being available, they happened to me, so it was minor. And nothing compared to what happened there when they literally put something in my juice. I never finished the story because there's so much, and that's the point. You start to see how that's essentially the MO to have so much that I never finished. That day, as I went to the bathroom and I managed to get there in time, and I'm cleaning, I had to poo immediately because I didn't have a choice, and the damage to the underwear was measurable, but contained, cleanable. The damage to the pants was none. It was very little. There was this, in a matter of minutes of me getting inside me from that one peculiar day of them police officer trying to break into the bathroom. And this one day, as I have the pants open there, because normally I just lift up my pants, open the door, what the fuck's happening? I'm using the toilet, something like that. We have this, again, this is a law enforcement officer. We're not talking about just security. That's what I emphasize the whole thing. That it's essentially a federal law enforcement, a federal agent, for what it's worth. Okay? And trying to break into the bathroom of someone. And I've been there in the airport for a long time. And I've been talking on the audio because, again, by then I've been recording things on the phone. And similar to what you see here, my impression is either that was set up in advance, or the argument I think that was a bait. Just designed so the officer could say those things. And what you see this federal agents, law enforcement officer saying was, if you're not boarding here, you're here as a favor, which means you cannot, it's a direct quote again, create problems for anyone. So you cannot do that. If you're here with a right to be here, if you have the right to be here, show me your ticket, your boarding things that you had. So if you're doing that, you do not. You see the point of that is, essentially what you have this law enforcement officer saying was that it was okay to abuse a human being, and to a very low level. Again, literally, at that point, they have thrown something with no other purpose than to degrade me. Up before that, they threw narcotics on me. I think it was this day. Unfortunately, it was the same day when I couldn't breathe. And they all tried to look nice when I went to, for instance, the health clinic, saying something along those lines. They actually trying to medicate that, and they let them put something on me. Supposedly they said it was just one medicine, even though I clearly saw them mixing two flasks. And no, Saline is not one of those. Saline is not tiny flask with which sedated me. Now, for a guy who's struggling to breathe, perhaps sedation is one of the methods. But again, as I said, they use drugs on me particularly so much. My pressure, imagine, go down considerably. So basically, this is, I guarantee you, for a safer, there was law enforcement, there was healthcare personnel also doing that. Although the whole assumption was for me not to use the services. So you remember what we saw, I mentioned earlier, the retaliatory thing, when I tried to report a crime, or presumably that, well, anyone would assume that was the case, but also put, in my opinion, I think it was a mix of both. A mix of that with indeed just trying to indeed that, but also what I think is the main one, which is the possibility that I have actually recorded some of those things, because by then I had no phone, and I think I made some implications when I was calling Tanya about being able to prove things. and they either was misinterpreted or I deliberately wanted to cause misinterpretation so I to protect myself. It was one of those things. And to search my bag to assure the criminals and see if any similarity between those two law enforcement officers sounds similar. See if we can pick up on any similarities between those. So again, this is Argentina, and this is the police Sociedad, there's the one in the internal city, and the one in the airport, the airport police PS, PSA, I think, with the insignia. To the airport in Ezeiza. But also you see that well, you don't need to go too far. In Aeroparque, they wanted Tanya to depart. Tanya, I had 67 years of age, to depart the airport. At least it was summer-ish. It was summer? No, it was autumn. Because it was March. Yeah, it was March, so it was autumn. Well, about that. I think it was maybe the late summer. Early fall, basically. And they wanted Tanya at 67 years of age to depart Aeroparque, which is, if you know anything about Buenos Aires and how it is, it's straight up in front of Rio del Plata. You walk out and you see the river. It's just that. It's like a beach. It's by the coast, right? As a matter of fact, this street is called Beira Mar or Beira River or something like that. It's just by the, something called river, right? But whatever it is, it's something related to the river. It's a coastal one. I'm never confused with the city of Thieves, something like that. But either way, the street is literally by the sea. By the sea, it's not sea, the river, but you know what I mean. And they expect a 67-year-old woman, a transport, a 64, compel, not forcing her with force of by hand, but to leave at 3 a.m. in the morning. The idea that was that she should be so scared to go back there the next day that she wouldn't do so. That being said, if you know anything about this crime and know anything about Tanya at that time, was still very much a victim. I would say a bit half and half. Through phone, you see her several times trying to emphasize how much I would not come home. Thinking you see her stay here, even though, again, the things are back home. Overall, with in Buenos Aires, in Ezeiza, I was struggling to breathe, and I could just be next to other people and showcase how ridiculous it is. It's kind of like I do here on this Do Torture Days. Back home, it'd be worse than that, except that it'd be difficult to prove. There'll be always assumptions that I'm doing something myself. There'll be always a sort of things, which is why she's obsessed. Always opinion as well that I will go back there, and it's one of the reasons I cannot do this. As a matter of fact, any home-like place would be very clear to see, because if in a mall surrounded by people over there 6 hours, by the time when I film starts, you're still gonna see criminals saying that I'm doing something myself, even though that even when I use the bathroom only because they throw piss drugs in there for me to have to, the phone is recording and I use the urinal. So at any point I'm in private. And you're still gonna see assumptions of that. You can assume that if I'm ever actually private place, there's a reason why there's always a little guy recording in the bathrooms. As I said, as degrading as it is, it's not pointing at me, but even then, this is actually record the noises, or I showcase the bags being closed before I get in, and they are open, how you cannot pick up anything on top. Not because I think it's necessary at this point, but because I want to make it clear that I can't help, as I said, if any leg up, I always imagine talking to a reporter directly. So when I say you, I usually either mean public or report. If I can provide any leg up to help you interact with the criminals later and getting back. That guy's been helping today. My assumption is that he's probably not paying for the fuel, or for the brake, or suspension, or other things. Okay. And he probably wouldn't have enough money to pay for the truck in case we actually had a collision there. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just an imbecile. As for the... shop. Yeah, I do, because it didn't close up anything. Because it's a baby, so I have a chance. Yeah. So things are much worse. Actually, shouldn't think so much. As I said, for worse days here, rarely you'd see things being worse than they were there. And this, as I said, I grew up in this country. I only went to Argentina. I went to Argentina before, but not too much before, even if there was some type of crime happening already. But it was before this. And He, as I said, many times in law is followed, right? As I mentioned before, many bizarre incidents like the ones I described. When, for instance, you have this walk past by the sea, right, done by a cyclist. Right after the, I think, I don't know, the Olympic Games or the World Cup. The FIFA World Cup, there was a collapse there, and 5 people passed away. 5 people died, and might have even called them Brazilians or little Brazilians died or whatever. But at the end of the day, I was emphasizing the ridiculousness. No. I feel like I'm justifying myself. Fuck that. We mentioned that later. So let's say many things get broken, but you usually have the assumption that the law has to be followed, and that there is very clearly a law. So when you go from that to what you witness to what I witness, and you can do that as well, and many of the criminals then, to this complete sense of it's actually absolutely alright to do certain things with that are clearly moral and clearly legal, with no repercussions at all. It's not something that was familiar. And even here, you see how there is a genuine assumption that certain things have to be hidden. Issue is, that's what it dies too, because as you see every day, things are still being carried away, right? But you see how the assumption kind of goes. You know, like it's the mall, and they're playing drugs for me, the street is on the street. They're not even using that much torture drugs anymore, even though when they did, again, you can clearly see this guy is standing next to you. All of a sudden his face is starting to melt down, and he's clearly under the effect of something, and again, being public the entire time, it matters. As I said, even the reason for the state in the bathroom as well, the fact that they're going to try to throw things while I'm in the bathroom instead of other places, kind of goes in those lines. This more shameless thing done like openly, even while witnessing Paraguay, dumpster country, when even before me saying that, it always made fun of Paraguay because it goes in a long way, but nothing to this level, and usually it was just banter. It's like saying how beautiful Edinburgh is. If you've been to Edinburgh, you understand the joke. I had never been, but I had several Scots joking that, and it's very clear. It's like Grimsby, but for different reasons. Actually, I would like to go to Grimsby at some point. It seems like it's a very beautiful city. I saw the pictures. But no. But for people who've been there, the very clear assumption. You take every exit out of Grimsby, you have to. But you can. I don't know if that's just a joke about the name. I mean, in Britain you have all sorts of jokes in between cities for the little and normal one. In the Anglo, yeah, I had a lot of watch streamers. I watched a lot of watch streamers and they were British or British related, so this is actually why I knew a lot about I suppose kind of make fun. You can sense that in the US I think it's more straightforward, you know. I was gonna joke about the thing itself, but I don't want to detract a bit too much. Okay, focus. At this point I actually will remove the headphones. For this entire time, they keep falling off because I keep smiling and changing my thing, so they keep getting loose. And I was forcing myself to leave it there, just because I want to, as I said before, they would say that I'm listening to something, even though the phone's not even connected to anything. Actually, you might be able to see that now when I put it in, because if it is turned off, no, it did. Turn it later. Perhaps it's not turned off, and perhaps that's a false assumption. No, not a false now. It takes a second or two. Perhaps it did take a second before as well, I don't know. When it turns off, my impression is it takes 1 second to actually the light turn on, because essentially the thing is turning on and then it's starting to connect. But it's just an assumption. Anyway, as I was saying, I'll just be able to have board the post in a minute. So today I have this thing ready. I put the backpack into the foot. Move very easy. Chip is there. Chip is good. Good is relative. Okay, back to the point. Anyhow, as far as in general, just the one thing I'll say about myself, I'm never particularly peculiarly politically correct, PC person all talking. That long day. As a matter of fact, much of those streamers are kind of men of my own heart in their way of speaking and everything else. Something that I always very much characteristic for. And again, either way, it doesn't matter. Again, we're not talking about them being mean to me in the internet or talking mean things about me somewhere. We're talking about them throwing narcotics on me systematically every day. We're talking about them throwing things on me to wake me up throughout the middle of the night and having to piss desperately or piss myself. I'm talking about them doing dehumanizations, like not allowing me to enter a store with money to buy something 10 meters. What happens in some countries, you've seen video these days. 10 meters inside the place to buy a piece, showing the money in the entrance, which people don't do, to buy one thing and then leave under the assumption that in quote you're thinking too much, which by the way traces back to the Concordia incident, which we're gonna still talk about. That's something that is I'm never gonna forget to talk about that because it's very in my mind. I need to think mention Concordia incident and everything that comes out smooth. Which by the way, that's an incident that happened in 2023, 2024, 2023, 2024, 2024, when 2026 now. I knew it 2 years ago. My assumption was like 2025, and my brain just had no stuff to cope. It was 2024 in February, a couple of days before my birthday, by the way. You have Tony's behavior that just a sadism they would know for bit and shit at this point. Nothing else, no. Another point for this. And as I said, this is easy to remember for later than to mention now. What I want to mention now instead is the things that I was talking about. Well, nothing. It's taking the bus. Let's throw it slightly to the side then. Oh, where's the bus? The bus is gone. Can I see what happened to the bus? What was that? Maybe it's gone? If you turn out of the way, I will show that to you when it passes down there. Because if you turn out of the way, you'll be passing down there in a minute. We'll be showing you that. Maybe it wasn't that bus, it could be another bus. There's another bus that passes as well, but then it wouldn't pass in that way. And if it is indeed that bus, then it has to pass that way. So the simplest thing is to just show it here. You might also come out of this tree, but then why would I have done the balloon? Because it's a vehicle parked with the blinkers on there? See, this is the thing that they generally leave under the expectation that you're gonna think, yeah, that's completely unrelated. The vehicle wasn't there until now, by the way. So, as that, by the way, as I mentioned, I'm not a particularly stupid person. I don't believe I'll be claiming to be, genius that I can fool everybody else like they do. But as I would say, I don't think I am. I'm probably stupid myself. So, I assume that at times when I don't do things that are relatively obvious, that I had just been drugged enough that I'm no longer capable of functioning, which is sound a bit more for them. Although to be fair, the driver, at least the one at 11, seemed to be reasonable, professional enough. No, I think that's a bus now. So I might not need to be in desperation. But just see the impact it has on me, how I stay like literally hanging up, unsure. Give me a second.